FBI agents are facing threats for executing a lawful search warrant. Some Republican heavy hitters are baselessly accusing the White House of influencing the Justice Department. Oh, and the President of the United States, he just signed off on the largest congressional climate investment in U.S. history. There's tons to discuss. So joining me now is our political panel. Democratic strategist Basil Smikle is the former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party. And Gavin Smith is here. He is a former Trump administration official who's now the CEO of Gavin James Public Affairs. Okay, welcome to you both. Gavin, let me just start with you, because if history tells us anything, I think that it's no amount of contradictory facts are going to shake Donald Trump's supporters of this idea that the FBI is out to get the former president and anyone who supports him. We now know that the Department of Homeland Security, though, and the FBI are reporting spikes in threats against agents. Trump supporters are caught up in this disinformation web from the former president. Some of those supporters have died in the past. How does this end?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me, Simone. And, I think that this is a typical page right out of the Trump playbook. Many of us that left the administration, we call him Captain Chaos, and we call him that for a very specific reason. We call him that because in a bad PR situation like this, Donald Trump's first page out of his playbook is just to flood the zone, to flood people with so much information that they just get confused and they stop paying attention until there's a new media cycle. And that is that's Donald Trump 101. So I think, further, it also plays to Donald Trump's base that, on the far right, that they buy into these conspiracy theories. I mean, what did you see right after Donald Trump's home was searched? You saw Donald Trump go on a social network and say that, the FBI had planted information. Well, why did he do that? He did that because that fuels the base. It raises money and it gets people excited on the far right fringe base of the Republican Party about his candidacy.
Basil, what Gavin is describing, this effort to sow distrust into any institution that attempts to hold Donald Trump or any of the other faves of conservatives accountable, this has dangerous consequences. Talk to me a little bit about those consequences, but also how do we combat them?
Sure. Well, first of all, when you talk about weaponizing the FBI, quite personally, as a black man in America, this isn't that. This is not weaponizing the FBI. It, frankly, is part of a long attempt to hold this president accountable. I go back and think about the first impeachment hearings where I had people coming up to me on the street and saying, why don't Nancy Pelosi and Jerry Nadler push the gas on this? And the effect of it was that there's this need to really hold this president accountable. And we've, seen that for years now. And I take Merrick Garland at his word that, this is a meticulous process that he needs to get right. And we all are invested in him getting it right. So having said that, look, I think Republicans right now don't want to be talking about this. They wanted to be talking about inflation. They wanted to be talking about victories with the Supreme Court rulings based on the judges that Donald Trump put in place. And Democrats actually have an alternative message and narrative, which I think is a strong winning narrative going into these midterm elections. The danger, as you asked the question, is that this continuing to attack law enforcement, which is contrary to what Republicans were talking about in reference to Democrats talking about defund the police.
Yeah,
all
what
of a sudden
happened to
now
back
they're
the
going
blue?
after law enforcement. They're going after law enforcement. And frankly, the danger is that it will continue to sow the sort of collapse of small d democratic government in this country. And that is a serious concern that we have all been concerned about for quite some time. But this just deepens that anxiety.
From the very beginning, I think this is one of the pieces, this collapse of trust in our institutions, that has really kept me up at night. I think one of the most insidious claims that I have been hearing is this idea that the White House is weaponizing the Justice Department. President Biden made it clear from way back in the transition, I worked there, that he would never try to influence the Justice Department in any way. And as we know, that's in deep contrast to his predecessor, Donald Trump. You know, these baseless accusations. No serious Republican, Gavin, believes these, do they? I mean, I know that Trump's ardent supporters do, but what about serious Republicans?
Look, I think quiet talk amongst Republicans down the middle, your Mitt Romneys or have you, those are the Republicans that they don't believe these conspiracy theories. I think that, one thing, you're very right that the Trump White House was terrible at doing was being quiet. And that's what this White House, the Biden White House, is doing a phenomenal job at. I constantly get asked, when's the president going to come out and say that he hasn't influenced the DOJ in this investigation? And the answer that I always give, if he was my client, is he shouldn't. He shouldn't influence that, because this is the justice system working. This is the justice system doing what it's supposed to do. And the president, in stark contrast to the former president, shouldn't engage in that. And I think that that's what Republicans quietly, reasonable Republicans, I think that's what they're glad that this president is doing and what they wish the former president would have done.
I saw Basil shaking his head. I mean, I agree. Like, it's just been so clear to me. It's just very clear that Joe Biden couldn't be any more clear. Like, what does he need to do? Wear a T-shirt on Tuesdays? I don't know. Before we go, we got to talk about the fact that the president did sign the Inflation Reduction Act into law. This is monumental. And he and the vice president and the cabinet are about to hit the road to sell this. Basil, you have led a state Democratic Party. You know as well as anybody else that after August, it is a mad dash to Election Day. So what do you think Democrats need to do? What are you looking forward to hearing from the White House on down?
Well, being on the same page is actually the most important thing that I think Democrats can do going forward. If you think about Jamal Bowman, member of Congress from New York, who signed on to the bill and said, you know what? I came to Washington thinking bigger and realizing that even getting 20% of what you wanted is a victory. And that actually is a victory for Democrats, quite frankly, because it gives all of us an opportunity to say that the Biden administration produced X, Y, and Z. We can all go forward with that same voice, same narrative, same message, and be consistent. And as long as we can do that and actually put some money behind that in the messaging, then we have the talking points to be able to give to voters to say, we've done X, Y, and Z. Look at what's happening on the other side. Their standard bearer his house is being raided. We're actually delivering bills and packages of relief for taxpayers. That's what we have to do. It's the arc of the narrative. What to get on the other side, but also what Democrats can provide in a positive way going forward.
I agree with you. Arc of the narrative. It was a lawful search and seizure, Basil, not raid. Okay. Basil Smikle, Gavin Smith, thank you very, very much.